Once upon a time in France, in the year 1638, a baby was born who would make the entire country sparkle, sweat, and occasionally starve under chandeliers. His name was Louis Dieudonné, later known as Louis XIV, the Sun King, the man who saw the sun and thought, yes, that's me. I'll take it. Brand secured. His birth was a miracle after 22 years of royal marriage with no heir, so naturally everyone celebrated like France had just won the medieval World Cup. Bells rang, choirs sang, astrologers claimed the stars themselves bent over Versailles in the making, and courtiers whispered that the baby was destined for greatness. Spoiler, he was destined for wigs taller than your neighbor's chimney and a palace so large it needed its own plumbing hacks. Louis didn't exactly get a normal childhood. At age 4, his father Louis XIII died, and little Louis technically became king. Imagine a toddler with a crown, still learning to hold a spoon, now responsible for a kingdom. Of course, he didn't rule alone. His mother, Anne of Austria, took the reins as regent, and her right-hand man was Cardinal Mazarin, a master of diplomacy and politics with the face of a man who always knew when to say no. But the young king quickly learned one crucial life lesson. Paris was not always safe. When civil unrest known as the Fronde broke out, rebels actually stormed close enough to his royal nursery that baby Louis reportedly had nightmares for years. Picture it, nobles in lace shouting outside your bedroom, waving swords while you're just trying to nap. That trauma baked deep into his royal soul, and one day he would build an entire golden palace just to keep those nobles busy and far away from rebellion. Versailles, my friends, was therapy with fountains. Fast forward to 1661. Cardinal Mazarin dies, everyone expects Louis will appoint another chief minister to handle the boring stuff. But the young man, now 22, shocks them all. He stands up, glitter in his eyes, and says, I will rule by myself. No prime minister, no go-between, no customer service hotline. If you wanted something, you booked time with the sun. It was personal brand time, baby. Louis didn't just call himself the Sun King, he danced it. Literally. In his youth, he starred in court ballets as Apollo, god of the sun, strutting in golden tights. He made sure everyone in Europe understood. He wasn't just a king, he was the center of the solar system. Nobles, planets, courtiers, even poets revolved around him. And because trauma makes you creative, Louis decided to invent a system that would tame those rebellious nobles forever. He dragged them out of Paris and into a brand new palace in the middle of nowhere, a place called Versailles. What started as his dad's modest hunting lodge became the most extra palace in human history. Versailles wasn't just a home, it was a leash with chandeliers. At Versailles, every moment was a ritual. Louis invented daily ceremonies for himself, turning brushing teeth and putting on pants into royal theater. The lever, his waking up ceremony, featured nobles elbowing each other for the honor of handing the king his shirt. The coucher, his going to bed ritual, was another competitive sport. Imagine a bunch of dukes and princes fighting like Black Friday shoppers just to give the king a candle or tuck him in. Versailles was the world's longest-running reality show, keeping up with the Bourbons. And the prize wasn't roses, it was influence. If you weren't at Versailles, you weren't in the game. But Louis wasn't just about palace drama, he was also about spreadsheets. Enter Jean-Baptiste Colbert, his finance genius, the man who turned France into a manufacturing powerhouse. Colbert promoted industries, slapped tariffs on imports, and made in France into the Gucci of the 17th century. Under Louis and Colbert, France dominated fashion, ballet, etiquette, and language. French became the language of diplomats, of style, of everything fancy. If you were elite in Europe and you didn't speak French, were you even elite? Of course, glamour is expensive, and Louis loved spending money like fountains loved water pressure. He fought wars like they were subscription packages. The War of Devolution because his wife's dowry said so. The Dutch War because Amsterdam needed humbling. The War of the Reunions because he was bored. The 9 Years' War because coalitions were trending. And then the big one, the War of the Spanish Succession, where Louis tried to place his grandson on the Spanish throne. Europe freaked out. What if France and Spain unite? and formed a massive anti-Louis squad. The war dragged on forever. Peasants ate sadness soup, and France ended up broke, though his grandson still got to keep Spain with conditions. It was diplomacy's version of fine, but don't show up at Thanksgiving. Louis's wars and palaces cost so much that even Colbert's calculators started sweating. Taxes rose, peasants struggled, famines came, but Versailles fountains kept spurting whenever the king walked by. True story. The gardens didn't have enough water pressure to run all fountains at once, so gardeners devised a system. They turned on fountains just ahead of the king and turned them off as soon as he passed. Louis thought nature itself adored him, while the staff ran a silent marathon behind the scenes. For all his shine, Louis had shadows. In 1685, he revoked the Edict of Nantes, which had protected French Protestants, the Huguenots, since 1598. That meant religious tolerance is cancelled. Mine. Hundreds of thousands fled to England, the Netherlands, and Prussia, bringing skills and money with them. Those countries said, "Merci, we'll take your talent," while France lost some of its best workers. Economically and morally, it was a royal own goal. But Louis, ever stubborn, believed one king, one law, one faith. The sun doesn't share the sky. And then there was his personal life. Oh boy, a drama worthy of its own Netflix show. He had mistresses galore. Louise de la Vallière, sweet and shy. Madame de Montespan, fiery and ambitious. Madame de Maintenon, pious and serious, possibly his secret wife. Each one came with scandals, jealousies, and whispered gossip that made Versailles the hottest tabloid scene in Europe. But Louis loved magnificently, grieved deeply, and performed endlessly. He buried a son, a grandson, even a great-grandson. Outliving nearly everyone, he reigned 72 years, still the European record. The older he got, the more he worked. Despite the wigs and the parties, Louis was a workaholic. He woke early, met councils, signed documents, read reports, and kept France running like a ballet with cannons. He suffered terrible health issues. Famously, a dental surgery where they removed teeth like they were renovating his jaw, and a painful fistula surgery that was bizarrely turned into a PR event. Imagine poets writing odes to your medical operation. Only at Versailles. Finally, in 1715, after 7 decades of glitter, wars, wigs, and water tricks, the Sun King's light faded. At 76, he died at Versailles, leaving the throne to his 5-year-old great-grandson, Louis XIV. His last advice: don't imitate my wars. Try to help your people. It was the closest the sun came to shade. So what do we make of Louis XIV? He centralized royal authority, turned France into the cultural police of Europe, built a palace so extra that everyone copied it, and left behind debts so big they echoed into the French Revolution. He was genius and tyrant, showman and strategist, Apollo on stage, and workaholic at his desk. He was a man who turned kingship into performance art, proving Shakespeare right. All the world's a stage, but Louis insisted on better lighting and 17 mirrors. His fountains sputtered, his nobles curtsied, his wars burned, his wigs defied gravity. And yet, centuries later, we still walk through Versailles, squinting at the chandeliers and whispering in the hall of mirrors as if the sun himself might appear. That's legacy. That's branding. That's Louis XIV. So what's the moral? Absolute power can build beauty that steals your breath, and bills that steal your sleep. Nobles can be tamed by etiquette, but peasants can be angered by taxes. The sun warms, but it also burns. Louis XIV was not just a man. He was an era wrapped in gold leaf and debt. And if you enjoyed this ridiculous, glittering ride through history, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and join us next time as we roast another royal. Because history isn't boring, it just needs a better wig.